On a windy New Jersey afternoon, Furio Junta stood behind his boss on a helicopter pad. The rotor was spinning. Tony Soprano's back was turned, and for one long, terrifying second, Furio thought about it. A small step forward, a push, the end of everything. He didn't do it, but the fact that he even hesitated tells you everything about what had gone wrong between these two men. Because when Furio first arrived from Naples, he would have died for Tony Soprano. By the time he stood on that helicopter pad, he was thinking about killing him. To understand how it broke, you have to remember how it started.
They become soft living in America. You can't find anybody over there that believes in the old way.
So you were Naples, guys?
Tony flew to Naples for one specific reason. He needed muscle. Real muscle. Men who weren't tied up in the politics of the Jersey crew. Men who owed him and only him.
A friend of ours is coming in. Furio.
And he came back with Furio Junta, a pure-blooded Neapolitan enforcer with a code, a ponytail, and a quiet menace that made even Christopher shut up. At first, the chemistry was instant. Furio drove him, Furio collected for him. Furio had dinner with him and Carmela. They went on side jobs together. Tony loved having Furio around.
In Napoli, a lot of people are not so happy for Colombo.
Because Furio was everything Tony pretended to be. Disciplined, dangerous, old school. The strong, silent type that Tony idolized but could never actually become. So what happened? How did the most loyal man in the entire Soprano operation end up fantasizing about murdering his boss? The answer isn't one moment. It's 3 slow-motion collisions happening underneath every scene they shared. Here's the first thing nobody talks about enough.
He never reached heights like me.
Furio wasn't just from Italy. He was from the version of organized crime that Tony's whole world was a cheap imitation of. Watch the scenes side by side. There's an episode where Tony and Furio are both eating at home, alone. Tony microwaves a tray of leftover ziti, drinks a glass of milk, eats standing up. Cut to Furio, same night. He's at his stove, making fresh pasta, pouring himself a glass of red wine, sitting down at a table. 2 men, same job, 2 completely different worlds. David Chase put that scene there for a reason. Furio represented the tradition, Tony represented the degradation, and the longer Furio stayed in America, the more clearly he saw it.
Can I just get some macaroni and gravy?
Remember Polly Walnuts in Italy demanding macaroni and gravy at a real Neapolitan restaurant?
Furio, coming here? What? To see what indoor plumbing looks like?
Remember the Jersey guys laughing about indoor plumbing while sitting across from men who had been doing this for centuries? Furio watched all of it. He came over thinking he was joining a family. He realized he had joined a glorified crew.
They're a glorified crew.
Tony wasn't Don Vito. Tony was a guy who ate ice cream out of the carton and called it dinner. And once Furio saw the gap between the myth and the man, he could never unsee it. Now, let's be honest about something. Furio was not a saint. This is a man who beat a woman bloody for refusing to pay extortion. He's a Neapolitan gangster with a body count. So when people say Furio had a code, they're not saying he was a good man. They're saying he had rules. And Tony Soprano broke every single one of them.
You can be a moody bitch.
Watch what happens. Tony calls Carmela a bitch in the car. Then, at the casino, he openly gropes a hostess like she's a piece of furniture. Furio's face goes still in a way that should terrify you. Because for Furio, you don't talk about a respectable woman that way. You don't grope a stranger in public. There's a wall between business and family, and Tony was bulldozing it. Then there's the scene that broke a lot of viewers.
What's the matter with you?
Said for my father.
Alright, but you gotta get over it.
Furio's father has just died. He tells Tony, quietly, "I'm sad for my father." And Tony's response? "Alright, but you gotta get over it." Cut. Smash cut. Tony in Dr. Melfi's office, sobbing, about a dead horse. That's not subtext. That's David Chase grabbing you by the collar.
So I wrapped the paper, and there she is.
The same man who could not give Furio 30 seconds of human empathy was the very next scene, drowning in his own tears over an animal. Furio noticed. Furio remembered. Every time Tony demanded loyalty he hadn't earned, every time he disrespected someone weaker, Furio filed it away. Because here's the brutal truth. You can't keep respecting a man who treats his own wife worse than he treats his gumars. And this is the line that ties the whole thing together.
It's adorable, Furio, really.
Furio didn't fall out of love with Tony. He fell into love with the woman Tony didn't deserve. Which brings us to the third collision, the one nobody saw coming, Carmela. Furio's feelings for Carmela are usually described as a romantic subplot. They were not. They were the detonator on the entire relationship. Because something happens to a man when he starts to love a woman his boss is destroying. He starts to see his boss differently. Every dismissive comment Tony makes about Carmela becomes personal. Every public humiliation of her becomes a wound on Furio's own pride.
I'm not home now. Leave a message.
He tries to handle it. He distances himself. He stops coming around as much. He throws himself into earning. But it doesn't work, because the problem isn't proximity. The problem is that he's in love.
Where's Furio?
He couldn't get a flight out of Rome in times.
And then comes the trip back to Italy for his father's funeral. Furio sits with an old mafia elder, a man who has seen everything, and he confesses it. He's in love with the boss's wife. The elder doesn't lecture him. He just gives him the math. There are only two options. You kill the boss, or you get over her. There is no third door. Furio comes back to New Jersey, carrying that conversation in his head every single day.
Every morning when he'd come to pick you up, I would look forward to it all night.
Every car ride with Tony, every meeting, every dinner, he is doing the calculation. And then they're standing at the helipad. The rotor is spinning, and for one moment, the third door opens. He almost takes it. He doesn't, because Furio understands something Tony never will. Killing the boss in America wouldn't be a coronation. It would be a death sentence. The crew would hunt him down. Carmela couldn't protect him. There was no future. So Furio does the only honorable thing left. He runs back to Naples, out of the show, out of Tony's life, forever. But here's what the show is really telling you.
The thing with Furio?
I did not sleep with him, Tony.
Tony and Furio didn't fall apart because of Carmela. Carmela was the spark. The fuel had been building for years. The deepest reason their relationship rotted is the most uncomfortable one.
He talked to you all, poor you.
Furio was a mirror. Every time Tony looked at him, he saw the man he was supposed to be. The disciplined enforcer. The man with a code. The man who didn't grope strangers in public. Who didn't humiliate his wife. Who didn't sob about a horse one day and dismiss a grieving son the next. Tony brought Furio over to be his perfect soldier. What he actually brought over was a daily, silent indictment of his own character. And here's the cruelest part. Furio never had to say a word. He didn't lecture Tony. He didn't moralize. He just existed with quiet dignity, a few feet to Tony's left, every single day. And eventually, even Tony, who could rationalize anything, justify anything, project blame onto anyone, could feel that mirror burning a hole in him. That's why he got short with Furio. That's why he pushed him out the door when his father died. Some part of Tony hated being around the man he could never become. And some part of Furio finally realized, this isn't a Don. This is a fat, sad child running a crew of thieves. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Tony Soprano's relationships always ended the same way. Slowly, then all at once. He drove away everyone who ever genuinely cared about him, because his selfishness was a slow poison nobody could survive long term. But Furio's exit hits differently, because Furio didn't leave because Tony hurt him. Furio left because if he stayed, he was going to kill him. And that's the most honest review of Tony Soprano in the entire show, delivered by a man who never said a single bad word about him out loud. Now I want to hear from you. What was the exact moment you knew Furio was done? Was it the helicopter? The sad clown line? The casino? Or was it something smaller? A look? A silence? A scene I didn't even mention? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more breakdowns of the moments David Chase left buried in the background, the next one's already in your feed.